Hello, I'm Julie Swenson, Managing Director of Forward Theater Company in Madison, Wisconsin.
And I'm Mike Fisher, Milwaukee-based theater writer and dramaturg.
And I'm Jen Uphoff-Gray, founder and artistic director of Forward Theater Company, and this is Theater Forward, a monthly conversation about theater from a local, regional, and national perspective. From Madison to Manhattan, we're excited to share insights into our own company while exploring issues surrounding theater in the Midwest and around the country. Welcome to episode 122 of Theater Forward.
Right.
And in this episode, we are going to be talking about some of the evolutions we've been seeing in the regional theater, especially here in the Midwest. And for this conversation, we have a very special guest, one we've been excited to get here for quite some time. BJ Jones, the artistic director of Northlight Theatre in Skokie, Illinois, or at least for a little while longer in Skokie, Illinois. BJ's been artistic director of Northlight since 1998. He's an acclaimed actor and director, and during his time at Northlight has overseen numerous, dare I say countless, world premieres. Northlight is among the largest nonprofit theaters in the Chicago area, maintaining thousands of loyal subscribers, as well as an array of engagement opportunities and an extensive youth education program. Welcome, BJ.
Jen, thanks for having me.
It is such a pleasure. And just to start off, just tell our listeners who may not know a lot about Northlight a little bit about your company.
Well, we're celebrating 50 years.
Amazing.
Congrats.
Yeah, that's kind of, and I know Steppenwolf, for instance, is saying it's their 50th anniversary, but I think they started the year after us.
Huh.
I might be wrong. Same thing is true with Victory Gardens. They were the year before us. So we're in good company in the Chicago marketplace. We started off as the Evanston Theater Company, and I was part of the first ensemble. I did my first show there in 1977, and two-time Tony Award winner Judith Ivey was in the company that I was in, and she came back and acted and directed for us during my tenure at Northlight. We do a lot of work, new work, I mean. Now I think we're up to about, since I've been there, 15 world premieres. And right behind me, you can see a rendering of the space that is being built, even though as we speak, on Church Street in Evanston, where we started off as the Evanston Theater Company. And we're really excited. We are 1 year from right now. We will be moving into the brand new building, which we've been dreaming about, frankly, since I walked into the space we're in now in Skokie. I've always wanted to be back in Evanston. I'm a longtime resident of Evanston, 40 years. My kids grew up here and went to school here. The same thing is true with my executive director, Tim Evans. He and his children went to school with my children. And though Tim was actually the first managing director, I think, at Steppenwolf, and it was in Highland Park, and I stole him away from Steppenwolf. So we're going through a very exciting period for us, and I couldn't be more anxious to get into that beautiful new space that we all collectively designed.
It's so thrilling and so well deserved. And you and I met many years ago before Forward was even started, but in recent years we've been talking a lot more because there seems to be a lot of symmetry in the programming that we do. I think we have audiences that are not dissimilar, and a lot of shows that we see on your slate wind up playing here later and vice versa. And it's just really lovely having a colleague in the region who is drawn to a lot of the same material. It's really fun.
Yeah, I agree, Jen. You have wonderful taste. No, I'm not at all self-absorbed, am I?
No.
But we do, and I'm really grateful that I happened to be perusing your website and saw, for instance, Flying Lovers of Vitebsk, because that was a hit for us. And of course, this year we just did Prayer for the French Republic, and it ended up to be one of our biggest hits over the last decade. And it couldn't be more timely. I think one of the things, I don't start off this way, but you know, we seem to be very fortunate in being able to time work that reflects our moment. For instance,
Mm-hmm.
we did Andy Warhol in Iran, and as of 2 days ago, Iran is clearly front and center in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
we also did a play called Charm, a world premiere called Charm, which was about Mama Gloria, who was a transgender woman who taught homeless trans kids. And it was before the pandemic. It was 2015 that we did it. And it's ended up to, the trans folks were really in the conversation the way they are now. So we were a little ahead of the game then. So I think both you and I keep our eye on what's happening in the world because I believe, and I know you do too, that art should lead the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what what matters to us and what matters to our constituency. And frequently, I think uh, our constituents, people who go to live theater, are plugged in and
Mm-hmm.
are anxious for that kind of conversation,
Mm-hmm.
meaningful conversation, and they like to be entertained. But entertainment
Yeah.
clearly has a broad definition.
Yeah.
It does,
Right.
just doesn't mean you're laughing. It also means that you're uh, using your mind and interacting with other human beings in a meaningful way about issues and in a welcoming, generous way about
Mm-hmm.
issues that are confronting us. Whether or not you agree or disagree, the exercise of having being in conversation is a very uplifting thing. And especially now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Beach, I want to go there on that because, at least in my experience with both you and with Northlight, going back to when I was on the dark side as a reviewer of some of your shows, that focus on the conversation with an audience seems like it's always been front and center. But I'm wondering if you could speak to how either with you, and or with regional theater that has evolved from, we're talking about the future with Northlight, but what about the past? I mean, we are, ladies and gents, and all others listening to this podcast, because Beach will be too modest to talk about it. But not only is he the artistic director at Northlight, he's a fabulous actor, and he's got an acting career that goes back to being a child actor with the oldest regional theater company in the United States, the Cleveland Playhouse. So you've seen regional theater and what's going on with regional theater for a long time. How has the conversation about the conversation with audiences changed from back when you were starting out to where we are now?
Boy, Mike, I just love you for asking that question because it's top of mind for me. When regional theater really started to take off, um, I think about Sarah O'Connor at Milwaukee Rep or Zelda Fitzchandler, and when I think about those leaders, Mr. O'Connell at the Cleveland Playhouse, and I think about those leaders, they were not unlike uh, conductors, great conductors in the country's great orchestras. That is, they put stuff on stage, pieces on stage that they felt their audience should should enjoy and relish. But there was a shift, and I think that's the case. Like my predecessor and some of that generation, they they felt that they wanted their audience to appreciate the kind of work, classical and otherwise, that that they that they sort of, and I don't want to say dictated, but they wanted to share with their audience. My own personal experience, especially since I was on stage so much, 8 nights a week, that a couple of matinees thrown in there. I got a sense of what the audience really wanted to perceive and take in and talk
Mm.
about. So I think there was a shift in regional theater in the '90s, in which the audience's tastes were taken into consideration by artistic leaders. It's why I think regional theater became more diverse and inclusive in their programming. It's not just that we saw those people, those faces in the audience. It's that we wanted to be more inclusive. We wanted to welcome them into our spaces. We wanted them to help lead the conversation. And so that's certainly the case for me. In the 28 years that I've been programming for Northlight, I've done more work by and for and with BIPOC artists than my five predecessors combined. So that really indicates a shift, I think, in our programming. And I know, Jen, you do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was
That
gonna say,
conversation, that
yeah.
privilege of having the conversation. I've told this story before, but it was one of the reasons that I wanted to leave my New York freelance career, because working in the commercial theater there, you'd never see the same audience members twice. And certainly not to have a conversation with them that was, lasting over years and seasons full of productions. And you can talk about, well, this thing really spoke to me and this other one didn't at the time, but now it does, as I remember it back in the context of this other play. And that back and forth feels so rewarding. And I love hearing you talk about it.
Can I
And
follow back on that back and forth? BJ, you're going from Skokie to Evanston. There's
yeah,
lots of good reasons to head on over to Evanston. I'm sure there are a lot of audience members that will follow you over there. It's not a big move for them, but it is a different audience. How will your thinking, how will your programming change, or will it?
we're about tomorrow. We start rehearsal for Twisted Melodies, which is the Donny Hathaway story. It's not just a biopic about a great musical artist. It's also about mental illness. And Kelvin Roston, who's a magnificent performer, uh, directed by Ron O.J. Parsons, and associate directed by Kelvin's wife, who did Marie and Rosetta for us, Alexis Roston. They're collaborating to bring this to our audience. I a lot of folks say, "Well, your programming is going to change." We're very successful, I think, and so one of my colleagues, Mark Masterson, who was the artistic director of City Theater in Pittsburgh and Actors Theater of Louisville and South Coast Rep, in conversation with him, he said, "Well, I don't understand why you change. You're successful as you are."
Mhm.
30% of our audience comes from Evanston, Skokie, and really it's more Evanston than Skokie. 30% comes from the city, and 30% comes from the North Shore. So I took that to heart. I listened to what he had to say, and I'm not sure we're going to change all that much. Even the musical pieces that we've done, we don't do a lot of them. We do mostly plays with music, but when you consider, for instance, we did Sideshow,
Mm,
which was about conjoined twins. We did Grey Gardens, which was about the Beale sisters. These are unusual
mhm,
pieces. It's not Dan Yankees and Guys and Dolls. Nothing against them, certainly.
mhm,
I'm just saying that even the pieces of, or we did a piece that I commissioned based on a play that I commissioned called Shining Lives, which
mm,
Mhm.
was about the women who painted
Yeah.
watches with radium. And
mhm,
it was it took place here in Illinois. And it's largely how our labor laws changed for safety's sake. And so we've done some kind of unusual pieces that aren't traditional musicals in that sense, and mostly plays with music. So, uh, and then we did, like I said, Andy Warhol in Iran. I wish I was doing it right now
mm,
because the play is filled with the history of how the United States was involved with uh, with uh, you know Iranian politics and or
Mm.
Well, not unlike
Yeah.
that one.
Another podcast.
Yes. But I think, you know, I really think, and thanks, Mike, for the question. I really think things have changed profoundly, and mostly when we look at what is on Broadway in the commercial sense. And Jenna, you're you're really the right person to talk about this. When you realize, for instance, Purpose started out at Steppenwolf,
Hmm.
and it workshopped. This is funny. I just got back from Colorado New Plays Festival, which is
Mhm.
Jim Steinberg, the Steinberg family, and his son Matt Laws, and they tell the story that Anna Shapiro called up Jim and said, "Listen, we're going to send Brendan Jacob Jenkins out to you to get him started on this play that we commissioned called Purpose." And he showed up with a bag of books, and he didn't have anything written, and he walked away with the first act. You know, when you realize how many plays, pieces, the last 5 years that we, commissioned and produced by Jason Robert Brown, which just closed on Broadway yesterday. When you realize how many pieces come out of the regionals and
Hmm.
then end up in the commercial theater, uh, we are uh, uh, we are the kitchen,
Hmm.
and they are the restaurant.
Hmm.
So I think, to Mike's point, we are a profound part of the great artistic theatrical mechanism, uh, and that's exciting for me, and I'm sure it is for you too. You commission
Hmm.
as well.
Yeah.
To run with that metaphor, Beej, so, and especially thinking of this as a conversation, are there times when you're in the kitchen and, you're listening to your audience, you know what they like to eat, but you're like, you know what? I want to try out some new spices. In other words, are there times when, even though you want to be responsive to and respectful of and giving to your audience, that you feel it is part of your job or obligation as an artistic director to lead, even if it's in a place where they may not be sure they necessarily want to go until they see what you actually put on stage? I'm not trying to throw that to you as a rhetorical or softball question. I think that's a real question in this post pandemic moment. Like, how brave do you feel you can be, and is it okay and is it appropriate, given your relationship with your audience, to be brave in ways that, or leading in ways that may not be what your audience necessarily thinks it wants?
So you're asking me about my flops.
No, I'll give you an example
No.
of something that's not a flop. I'll give you an example of your long time and, to me, heroic championing of Bruce Graham as a playwright. I don't think programming a play like White Men on the Bus is necessarily a play that
No.
is. I mean, that's a play where you're taking chances, but that was also pre-pandemic. So I guess in the moment we're in, would that be the kind of play you'd still feel comfortable program, not maybe that specific play, but plays like that are pushing the audience in places it may not be sure it wants to follow?
Yeah, the answer is yes. I'm still. I'll tell you that White Guy in a Bus was quite a success for us, as plays go. Um, because it really, the conversations afterwards were scintillating. Let me tell you. We've done maybe 5 or 6 of Bruce's plays. Outgoing Tide was about suicide, and of course, it starred John Mahoney and Rondi Reed, both of them Tony Award winners and Chicago favorites. But and White Guy in a Bus had Fran Guinan and Mary Beth Fisher. You know, we've got a lot of extraordinary talent in Chicago. You know that, Mike. You've been here a lot and seen a lot of work. So those plays, I still feel, I guess, courageous, um, because if I can get the audience riled up in either way, you know, I think that's I think that's part of our responsibility, isn't it, Jen? I mean, Don't you want to every once in a while? You know, it's funny. Now that you've said this, Mike. So when I first came, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to do three for. I do 5 shows a year, three for them, two for me,
Mhm.
and then and then the balance sort of shifted because we hit. I went through 9/11. I went through 2008, and now the Trump years are challenging, and the NEA is getting destroyed. And but I feel like we still need to, because that's who our audience. I think after all these years, I think that's who my audience is. I think they're so loyal. We renew it between 80 and 86%
Yeah, same.
every year. That's pretty high.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I know. I totally, totally agree, BJ. It's one of the reasons I love looking at, the seasons you've put on in the last decade, and looking at those shows. And um, I see a very similar feeling of, I wouldn't go so far as to say, one's for us, one's for them. Because I know you don't see that now as much of a divide, but I look at those plays and I go, yeah, this is one that people aren't going to be sure that they want, and here's one that they are going to be sure that they want. And like every season slate has this lovely mix of pushing the envelope, expanding what people think they might be open to, alongside things that you can get them in the door and maybe sneak in a few ideas while they're there. But I do see a very similar just ethos in programming when I look at what you do at Northlight. And it's not just because there's a lot of the same plays that either we do and you, and then or vice versa. But yeah, putting a murder mystery alongside something like Andy Warhol in Iran, right? That it's that lovely
Yeah.
juxtaposition.
And we did. We're going to be doing Mary Jane. You did Mary Jane as well.
Yeah,
That's brave programming, because it does have to do with heroic single mother
yeah,
and
gorgeous play.
and a child with terrible illness, and
Yeah,
uh, I'm going to follow that with uh, the Angel Next Door,
yeah,
which is based on a Ferenc Molnar farce,
yeah.
and
Right.
which may be too wide a swing. We'll find out. But it's also a celebration of theater. It's one of the reasons we're doing it, because it'll be the last show in our building, and so
I love that.
we want to tee up a kind of uplift. Of,
Yeah.
it was, I guess, the original title was Theater People.
Ha.
It's a celebration, I think, of theater people. So because I love actors.
Hmm.
For those of you listening in Wisconsin, it may ring a bell for you because it was done at Peninsula Players. But I will tell you that, and this was always the plea I would make in saying we have to review this Northlight show, Jim, to my boss at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and I would say, you realize you're sending me up to Door County every year. You realize it's faster and easier for me to get to Northlight Theater from Milwaukee than it is to anywhere in Door County, and on a bad day and with rush hour to Madison, Wisconsin. And so that is a plea to those of you who are listening from the Milwaukee market in particular. The theaters on the North Shore area and northern suburbs of Chicago should be on your radar screen. They're not that hard to get to. The work is extraordinarily good. And you see the kind of synergy that Beej and Jen have been talking about here in terms of very similar philosophies and in some cases plays. So they can be in conversation with each other. You can see Flying Lovers at Forward, which I walked out of, and I thought there's no possible way I ever want to see another production of this amazing show, until I walked in and saw the one at Northlight, which in a very different way blew me away every bit as much. And that just speaks to the kind of conversation that we're talking about in this podcast. All right, off my soapbox.
No, I love it.
Nice.
Great. And to your point about that, that's what's, people, oh, I've already seen that show.
Hello.
I've seen dozens of productions. Well, now that I think of it, I've been in dozens of productions that are entirely the same play, entirely different take, and that's what's exciting. I think back on David Cromer's Our Town, which started
Mm,
in Chicago, and it was unlike any other production of Our Town ever done.
Mhm.
Um, and the back wall when Emily goes back in time to her 16th birthday, and they open the back wall, and there was her mother cooking bacon.
yeah.
You
That's when
know,
I started to cry.
Uh-huh. That was
no one,
fantastic. Yeah.
no one ever did that before, and
Yeah.
that's really, you think, oh, I'm going to see Our Town again, which, by the way, was the first play I did when I was 15 years old at the Cleveland Playhouse, and it's still my favorite American play.
I was
And
in it when I was 15.
you know what I mean? And I went to on another note, my youngest daughter, who's 38 now, by the way, was a freshman in high school, and they did Our Town at Evanston Township High School, and I just burst into tears
Hmm.
watching little kids, and she was playing Mrs. Gibbs, Mrs. Webb, and then but this is hilarious. What they did was they put butcher paper on the walls of this room we were in, this schoolroom where they were doing it. And they had hand drawn like the town on the butcher paper. Halfway through the play, it started peeling off of the wall.
Well, if that ain't a metaphor.
And I still cried.
Oh my gosh. So, BJ, we've been doing this for a while. You've been, a leader in the regional theater for several decades now. Obviously, we've lived through COVID. We've lived through, a pandemic closing our theaters down. It's been bookended by these, shall we say, anti-arts administration at the federal level. Uh, what what are the things that are causing you to lose the most sleep these days leading a regional institution? What are the
Mm.
we've talked about some of the positive evolutions. What are some of the things that are making your job harder?
Well, I I worry. Um, for the first time, what does Sabina say in Skin of Our Teeth? Uh, I, I sit eating ice cream on my couch, waiting for better times in the theater, and that was 1944.
Hmm.
Um, by the way, I've done that play twice. I do worry, really, that the next generation, even though we've given away tons of free tickets and we, you know, have buses showing up to see a performance of whatever play we may be doing for them, I worry that we haven't really made live theater a part of their life. I worry that they're more interested in the screens than they are the opening of a curtain. So that's, my kids are green room rats. They did their homework in the green room while dad was on stage. And if I weren't involved in the play, I'm not sure that they would show up to the theater. And I take their kids to see plays, and my grandchildren, those that are of an age. But I'm not sure that they will catch our flu. When I was a child, I was taken to see a curtain puller production at the Cleveland Playhouse, and I knew I wanted to be involved in it. I don't know that we've done that. So that's my biggest fear is the future. My high school, I started the musicals, and at my high school, it's an all boys. It was the largest all boys high school in the state of Ohio, in Cleveland, and I started the musicals. and of course, I started myself in them, and I talked them into it, to doing musicals. I think the first one was How to Succeed. The second one was Camelot. They do it now. They spend a ton of money on them. But what I'm told when I talk to them is that they have a television studio, and those kids are drifting more to that than they are to the living stage. And that concerns me.
Yeah. If it makes you feel any
Mhm.
better, um, my kids who are closer to their high school years, the last one, the youngest just graduated high school, but she and her friends, there's a lot of theater. There's a lot of theater happening in their schools. And, it's as was the case when I was a kid. It's not everybody there, but it's robust. I think that there is a good segment of this younger generation that does really love the liveness and the uniqueness of that
I,
theater experience.
I hope so. We have 4,000 kids in our that we interface with in our.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's actually larger than Steppenwolf's now.
Mm,
But will it stick? That's the thing that worries me. Will it stick?
sure.
Do they want to? Do they all want to be on Reality Island or whatever? I don't watch them. I'm sorry. I, I don't know. I'm because I remember the day when I was going from a rehearsal. This when at the Cleveland Playhouse, when I was going from a rehearsal to a performance. We were rehearsing. I can't remember. I think it was the Amorous Flea, which is a musical version of School for Wives, to do a performance of Our Town and in between. And I thought, and it was a beautiful summer day. We were in Chautauqua, New York, where they used to do their summer season, and it was a beautiful day. And I thought, I haven't been outside all day, and it hit me that I just wanted to spend my life in the dark in the theater.
Mm,
I, do, I don't know if kids think that way now. So when you ask me what's my concern, that's my concern. Will they come into the profession, and or will they sit in the theater at night? That's my concern.
mhm.
A related question, Beej, to that issue. There's a really good actor in Wisconsin who refers to all that. We're talking about the screen thing as theater of the tiny. And given that Edwin Booth is her hero, she's not saying it kindly. Do you see, in terms
Mhm.
of the kind of theater that is now being made, in terms of how scenes are being written or how design is being done, is that world that is impinging on the theater world changing the nature of theater itself? And is that a good thing, bad thing, or is it just what is?
But I just one of my favorite things I saw. I think this is, by the way, a landmark, pivotal season on Broadway,
Agreed.
um, and maybe Happy ending.
Andy?
I think is uh, wow. And when you realize it was done first in South Korea in what 2015, 2016, around there,
15. Yeah.
um, they were way ahead of us in that regard, and it was done multiple times there, over and over again. And it came here late, but to see that on the commercial stage in New York, that was jaw dropping. Same thing with, and I'm sorry it's closing, Dead Outlaw, which I loved. And so both of them, I think, were, uh, you know, in a way, in their way, landmark. So the tiny theater, tiny theater. What did he refer to it as, Mike?
Theater of the tiny.
Theater of the tiny. Well, maybe but I think yeah, it certainly influenced maybe Happy Ending. Oh,
Yeah.
Mary, I way I would kill to do Oh Mary. That was a very special performance, I will say. But there must be a coal in every town. I would think.
Yeah.
Right.
I think
I
you'd
think
love the
so.
maybe happy ending because secretly what that is about is liberation from the screen, right? I mean, it's about, but you're right. I mean, in terms of the technology involved with it and how it was put together, it's indebted to the world we're in
Yeah.
right now. I'm with you on that one.
You
I'm
had said,
hopeful. Oh,
oh,
sorry,
no,
Julie.
I just wanted to clarify. You had said pivotal, and while, yeah, tell me why, BJ, that you thought that the Broadway series was pivotal. What
But
what pivoted on those on because Oh Mary is on Broadway? Is that what you mean by that?
not just O'Mary, but you look at how many Hollywood stars are flocking to New York to do work,
Hmm.
and which is nothing but good, I think, for live theater, because people will show up who haven't shown up before.
Sure. Yes.
Something that Jen said was, "Oh, in commercial theater, we sell one ticket and we don't see those people again." But maybe there might be 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 that say, "Hey, I like this experience. I saw Denzel, and maybe I'll go see Kelvin Roston do Twisted Melodies." Do you know what I'm
I
saying?
do. I do.
There are a lot of famous people who are showing up on stage, and they come for the stars, but they stay for the experience and for the message, and then the style of pieces. Maybe Happy Ending is not Damn Yankees.
Mhm.
Dorian Gray is
That,
not damn Yankees.
Right.
and
Yeah.
and Dead Outlaw certainly isn't My Fair Lady.
Yeah.
So
I I
I,
certainly appreciated Brendan Jacobs Jenkins
oh,
saying, "Please Google theater near me," and very appreciative of that.
that was fantastic,
Yeah.
and generous. Um, here's something else. I'm told he keeps rewriting his work, and Mike, I'm going to piss off your tribe, but plays aren't done. Um, I just did this workshop of the great Lauren Gunderson's play.
Between us, we're keeping, we could keep her employed just between the two of us.
Sure.
Yeah.
And there's a line
Mm.
that Shakespeare has in Muse of Fire. It's about, for those who are interested, it's about William Shakespeare coming home to Anne Hathaway and to retire, and he's going through a little bit of writer's block, finishing up The Tempest. But he has a line in there when she says, "How will you know when you're through?" He says, "When I'm dead, because I'll keep rewriting these plays."
Mhm.
Certainly Tennessee Williams did, but critics, there is an opening night and there's a commercial aspect to it that, like, you have to be done by a certain time, so that you can be assessed by the critics, and that determines whether or not you that play will live. I've done a bunch of plays that have not done so well in New York. We did the Rolling World premiere of Brooklyn Laundry, John Patrick Shanley's play, and it got reviews in New York, but our production got much better reviews. No offense to them, but what I'm saying is a reconsideration of the work. The work needs to, be funneled through a lot of different artistic visions
Yeah.
and to find its in its why regional theater is so important. It gives birth to new work and it
Yes.
refreshes classics or older work in a way that makes plays come back, like Cromer's Our Town.
Yeah.
Cromer's Streetcar,
Yeah.
right? I
Cromer's,
mean, absolutely.
It is clear to me that this conversation could go on for hours without pause. But for the sake of the listeners, we'll probably start to wrap up soon. So, BJ, I had asked, what's keeping you up at night. But maybe as we move to the end of this conversation, what are you most excited about right now?
a new space, and I'll tell you
Yeah.
what, because we're going to have opportunities that we don't have now. We share our space currently. So our new space, we can extend a show.
Mm.
It's a little smaller than our current space, but that gives us an opportunity to extend a show to give actors more work weeks. Look, here's the thing. Um, we had when I came to Northlight, we had a kind of shrinking audience. We had, I don't know, maybe 2,500 subscribers at that time. My second year, we had 8,000.
Mm.
And the exciting thing for me is to get back to that community. There are 75,000 people and students in Evanston. I'm excited about the opportunity to do new work and work with, as you get the opportunity to do with the University of Wisconsin-Madison. We get the opportunity to work with Northwestern and DePaul, and I really think I really think we're going to see some exciting things in our new space, and get the opportunity to encourage and engage the next generation. So it's really, that's kind of it. I worry about the next generation, but I want to get the opportunity to turn them on to this
Wow.
tremendous, endless, art form that we have. I don't think there will be better times in the theater, and you and I are making.
Beautiful.
Well, beautiful, BJ. I'm so excited to watch all of this happen and unfold for you. I'm so sorry that my 6 years as a Wildcat parent at Northwestern just came to an end when my second son just graduated from there, because they would have loved having you in their neck of the woods. But I will get down there on their behalf and see all the wonderful things coming for you.
One other thing, and I mean this, Jen, it's vitally important for me as an artistic director to have the kind of conversations that you and I have.
Mm-hmm.
The privilege of my profession is to work with and be in conversation with other artists.
Mm-hmm.
We get there's a tendency to be siloed in what we do. So your generosity, and Mike and now Julie, has to collaborate is profound, and it's a gift, because we can get all too easily we can get siloed and be alone. I'm very grateful for the generosity of our profession in the conversations that we've had. It's really
Amen.
fired me up as an artist.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. And right back at you. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. BJ Jones, thank you so much for being with us for this. And we will say that this is it for this episode of Theater Forward, a conversation about theater in Wisconsin, the Midwest, and America. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Jen Uphoff Gray.
And I'm Julie Swenson. And thanks again, BJ Jones, the Artistic Director of Northlight Theatre, for joining us.
And I'm Mike Fisher. And before I tell you that our podcast is produced by the amazing Scott Hayden, I will tell those of you from Milwaukee, once again, the directions to Northlight Theater: south on 94, left on Old Orchard Road, take a right on Skokie Highway. You are there. The parking is free. The air conditioning works, and the theater is great.
Right next door.
So our podcast is indeed produced by Scott Hayden, who has made all of this possible, as he always does. And he is also the person responsible for the fact that you can share your thoughts with us on Facebook. That's at Theater Forward. Theater, as always, as properly, as correctly, spelled with an ER.
And if you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you.
We are so grateful to have you listening, and we will be back soon for another Theater Forward conversation.